YouTube, Vinyl community, Syd Barrett fans, random people on the internet. My name is Giggens, and we're here today to talk about Syd Barrett's very first solo album, The Madcap Laughs. Now, you might be wondering why this cover looks different. This is a 1974 or 3 reissue of both his albums, Barrett and The Madcap Laughs, as a double LP set. So it's pretty cool to have both of them as one complete collection. So, Syd Barrett, if you don't know, was the original leader of Pink Floyd. He was on The Piper at the Gates of Dawn and a couple of songs on A Saucer Full of Secrets. His story is intense and there's a lot to it, but in a nutshell, he was a very outgoing, friendly, fun, hilarious guy, very creative, very art school student kind of guy. And then when the drug scene hit really hard, he got involved with acid a lot. And varying reports say whether or not he would have gone down the road he did without it, or the drugs didn't help, or they were just going to add to what was already going on inside his head. He kind of changed. He became kind of a different person. He was a little bit more removed, a little reclusive at this time. It would become more so down the line. And just disinterested with what was happening around him. He was also a big, his one rule was no rules, and so that very much follows Syd's life. But, he definitely suffered from mental illness, and we're not sure if drugs played a part in, sort of increasing what was happening inside his poor head. We don't know. But we do know at this time, he was basically asked to leave Pink Floyd. They brought in Dave Gilmour, who he was friends with. They'd known each other for years, and Dave was a big, guitar guy. Whenever bands needed someone to play guitar, they'd find Dave and hire him. And they got to the point in Pink Floyd where they were like, you know what, let's just not pick Syd up anymore. We go to a concert to play, let's just not pick him up. How sad is that? The guy that started their band, they just had to leave him behind. And at first they were like, let's hire Dave. We'll go out on the road, Syd can stay home and write songs. And it just didn't work out. And by April of '68, Syd was done. They did play a few shows as a 5-piece, and there are some pictures of them as a 5-piece as well, which is fascinating. And so Syd did play a couple of songs on A Saucer Full of Secrets, and his very last full song, if you will, was Jug Band Blues, which, listen to the lyrics on that one. It seems really fitting as like as a goodbye, if you will. Pretty much right after he left Pink Floyd, he was like, you know what, let's see what else we can do. And he went back to the studio throughout 1968, but nothing much was really happening. He recorded some things, but it just wasn't gelling. It wasn't really feeling really well. And he was doing other stuff at the time anyway. And then in early 1969, Malcolm Jones, who was the guy who started Harvest Records, which Pink Floyd put out some of their albums on Harvest, Malcolm was really keen on getting Syd back into the studio to do some new music. And EMI was a little about finding out that Syd might be back in the studio. There were rumors that he destroyed a bunch of equipment and stuff, in the tenure he was there with Pink Floyd. So EMI wasn't too crazy about having him come back, but Malcolm was really persuasive, and they got Syd to come back. And they cleaned up a lot of the tracks he had started the previous year, 1968, did a whole bunch of new ones. And eventually Roger and Dave from Pink Floyd came in to produce after Malcolm kind of lost interest in producing Syd. But a handful of different people play on this thing. Robert Wyatt of the Soft Machine, Mike Rattledge played keyboards, and Dave played bass and guitars and stuff, along with Syd, who sang everything and played acoustic guitar. I think some electric too. But it's a fascinating record. It really is, because so much of it is so un-Pink Floyd, but still very Syd, which at that time, Pink Floyd was Syd Barrett, really. So to hear him do his thing and have it sound sort of different than Piper at the Gates of Dawn is a very rewarding experience. The album cover, the original album cover, was done by Storm Thurgeson, who did tons of Pink Floyd album covers. But yeah, it's an album that grows with you over time, and I feel like there's so much to it, even though some of it is kind of sparse. Lyrically and emotively, it connects with you the more you listen to it. So Terrapin is the first track on here, and it's got this like really merrily, lightly strummed guitar, lazy summer day kind of vocal, and really heartfelt lyrics. I mean, it's a beautiful song. My hair is on end about you. I love that line. It's such a great line. And it's by far one of my favorite Syd Barrett songs ever. It's just so catchy, it's so charming, and it's nice to hear the sparse instrumentation because you let Syd and his music breathe. Whereas with Pink Floyd, granted it was amazing, and Piper is one of my favorite albums ever, there's a lot going on that record. And hearing Syd kind of naked, if you will, with just a guitar is wonderful because you really get to experience him. There's nothing more intimate than an acoustic guitar. But it's brilliant. No Good Trying is the second song on here, and this is one of those where like the guys had to keep up, and there's been reports of the guys trying to follow Syd, not play with him or play along, but follow, because there's moments where the timing jumps by like half a step, so it's just awkward enough to lose your place. And so I can hear, as a drummer myself, trying to play along, be like, what the, oh, okay, we're over here now. Like, it must have been a little hard to work with, but it's a really heavy, meaty power rocker with just an electric tenacity that prevails throughout this whole track. No good trying to keep up with Syd, if you will. Love You, I love this track. It's almost vaudevillian in its nature. I can almost see Mark Bolan doing this a few years later as one of his own tracks. Bit of a tongue twister. I love that. I Scream, Excuse Me. I've seen you looking good the other evening. The lyrical wordplay on here is great. It also has that very sort of Britishness to it, which a lot of bands were doing. Like the Who had that song Dogs, and of course the Kinks were big with that. So for me, this sounds like a very British type of song. I love it. No Man's Land is a groove. I mean, this could have been and should have been a single. It's muddy and fuzzy, and Syd's vocals are expertly articulate throughout this whole thing and surprisingly confident. This is one of the songs on the album where he sounds like really assured of himself, and I love hearing him like that. Everybody on this one is playing totally on par with each other, so it sounds like they got their rhythm corrected on this one. Dark Globe is a very short song, but a very interesting song. I'm only a person, won't you miss me at all? I love that lyric, and a lot of this album has themes of loneliness and longing and wanting to be in a relationship or wanting to have someone understand you. And for him, being where he was mentally, that's heartbreaking to hear because he was very alone. He was very isolated. No matter how close people got, they never really seemed to have gotten him, or he wasn't allowed to give himself to people. At least that's what I get from this song. And again, it's just Syd with an acoustic on this one. Here I Go. This track is one of his most pop tracks, if you will. I love the bridge. It's very early Beatles, which makes sense. He was a huge Beatles fan. But his nonchalant vocal delivery is so appealing in its sort of lackadaisical manner, if you will. Then you get Octopus, which was the lead single in December 1969. And they were pushing to have the album out by Christmas, but timing just didn't work out. So it came out in January of 1970. But this is an awesome single. I mean, it's got that chugging acoustic guitar, the catchy syncopated vocals, the colorful imagery. It's everything about Syd that's so infectious. And the chords are just warm and welcoming. Warm and welcoming. Bit dyslexic on that. But the way the song builds is great because you think you know where it's going to go, and then it takes a left turn, but it's a really welcomed left turn. So for as odd as the track is, it's very endearing. So I love this song. Golden Hair follows that. Very pretty, Baroque-esque type song. They could almost fit on side 2 of Odyssey and Oracle by the Zombies. I can definitely see it on that one. The cymbal swashes are a cool addition for some anxiety and tension. And then Long Gone. This track is awesome. It's Syd's sort of downtrodden tale of a breakup. A very Piper-ish track on this one, really. And wonderful organ treatments. His vocals on this one are awesome because they can go really, really high and to some almost falsetto stuff to some really long gone. He gets really deep in some parts. Love that. She Took a Long Cold Look. I love the line, to be extreme, just to be extreme on this one. Just Syd again, doing his thing, strumming along. Nice little song. Feel. This one has Syd alone, and there's excellent reverb on his vocal with this one, and it's got some really cool rhythmic changes happening throughout, and it keeps your attention. It's got like a demo-like charm to this one. It doesn't feel completed. I kind of like that. If It's In You, following another set of slightly incomplete, if you will, songs, there's a couple of false starts here, and you hear him kind of like talking his way through figuring it out, which is kind of cool to have on there. This song definitely feels like it's got a bit of work ahead of it, but I kind of like hearing it in this sort of broken new nature of it all. And then Late Night, you end with the full band again, and I love the vocal delivery on this one, the very tender and dizzying guitars in the background, against all that shuffling cymbal stuff is brilliant. Just a really nice song. It's a great way to end the album. And I want to point out the album cover here. There's a plum, an orange, and a box of matches. On one of Syd's trips, he was holding these three things, and he was like fascinated by them. This is one of the first times he tried LSD. And apparently somebody came up and took a bite out of his plum, and he was like petrified for like a couple of seconds, and then he laughed because he thought it was pretty funny. But that's why Storm did that front cover like that. So here's what the record looks like for this one. It's on the Capitol label, which is really cool to see. Really cool to see Syd Barrett on the Capitol label like that. Also fascinating because this was 1973 or 4. They weren't doing the color band logo anymore. So part of me thinks this might be a reissue from later on. Because I know Capitol brought back the color band label years later. So I'm not exactly sure when my copy is from, but I know this was originally issued in the mid-70s. But very cool inner sleeve, or inner jacket rather. Nice compilation of pictures of him. And the back cover just shows him with the track listings. But I love both of these albums. But the Madcap Laughs, there's something magic about this album that really caught him at the beginning of the end musically. I mean, he would go on to do some more stuff in demo form. He had a short-lived band called Stars that he gave up on when he saw a bad review. But really, his musical career kind of ended pretty much right after the early 70s. And he decided to stay home, just do his thing, live at home. And there's nothing more rock and roll than doing your own thing. Where he just got really into gardening, kind of dropped out from society and watched his TV, and he was happy, being with his mom or his sisters, doing his thing. He had enough of what happened. And my takeaway from Syd is that he was really into painting and making art. And he was a big rock and roll fan, of course, but I think rock and roll got too big for him. I think it became a job, and that bored him. And it sounds like he got bored easy. And then drugs were there, and his mental state was declining. So there was a lot going on, that mixture, perfect storm, if you will, of watching this poor guy in the spotlight not want to be in the spotlight. Fascinating individual. I don't want to have this review come off as like, let's paint mental illness in a positive way because, oh, look at the art that came out of it. Like, no, he had some troubles, and I'm glad he took time off for himself. Granted, it was 30-odd years, but, like, that's what he needed. He had enough of doing that life and wanted his own life or his own brain, his own peace of mind to do his thing. There's nothing more respectable than that. So take care of yourselves is what I'm trying to say. Take care of yourselves. That's what matters. So Syd Barrett, the Madcap Laughs, easily a 9 out of 10 for me. I love this album. It's fantastic. I could play it over and over again. Yeah, 9 out of 10. So Syd, thanks, man. Wish you were here. My name is Giggens. This has been Syd Barrett, the Madcap Laughs. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye-bye.